So last time we talked about strings and learned a little bit about them. We learned that a string is a character sequence, that its state is embodied in the character sequence it contains. And we also learned about a few string behaviors. But the question you might ask is, how can I find out everything there is to know about Python strings? Well, in this class, you know who your best friend is. It's the Google. And into Google, I'm going to type Python. You can do this too. Built-in types. Hit enter. And here we go. Google delivers the documentation for Python's built-in types. And we are working, as a reminder, we are working in Python 3. So these sections describe the standard types that are built into the interpreter. The principal built-in types are numerics, sequences, masses, mappings, classes, instances, and exceptions. What we're concerned with is numerics, we learned about those, and sequences. A string is a character sequence, so it exhibits a sequence behavior. In later videos, you'll learn about other sequences, including lists and tuples. So truth value testing. This is about Booleans. So here are things, here's reference materials on Booleans. Boolean operations. George is getting an appendectomy. No. Here are the three operations we learned about. And it is an prefix unary operator. It occurs before its operand, and its usage is shown here. And here are the two infix binary operators and an OR. They also explain how short circuiting works. And there's a spoiler there about the order of operations. You really should try to tease that out yourself. All right. Here they talk about the comparison operators. And here are two that we didn't discuss, but we could discuss maybe now or maybe later. It is possible to have two copies of the same thing, but for them to be different objects. This is identity. When they say identity, it refers to an object's actual physical placement in memory. There's is and is not. So we will probably discuss those. Yeah, we'll discuss those in more detail later. There are a lot of frightening looking things that you don't know about, but don't worry about those, because here's a little sweet spot. You can read this, you can understand this, and it will be helpful to you. As we advance, more things will become understandable and helpful to you. You can see here the numeric types in float and complex that we discussed in an earlier video. Here's plus, minus, times, divide, floored quotient, remainder, negation. Yeah, a minus in front of a variable or a number is the negative. It is actually a prefix unary operator. There's this built-in function for absolute value. Here's something converting to, here's cast to integer and float. Here's how you make a complex. Okay, and there are some others in here such as x double star y. Okay, so these are familiar things that you saw earlier, but now you see where they're formally written down. There are bitwise operators. It's early. I'm not going to discuss those at this point. But if you want to, you can go in and take a look around and see what they do. They are interesting little creatures. Okay, now let's go past the numeric types and let us find, let's see. We have iterator types. We have no clue what that is. Sequences. Strings are sequences. All right, strings are sequences. And so the way you should think of a string is as a sequence. And you can see that there are different, here is how we got the indices from a string. Here's how we get a substring. And here's an interesting little variation on that theme. In fact, I'll demonstrate it here. Let's go ahead and make a string. I'm going to open up Python. And I'm going to make a string that just has the alphabet in it. Okay, wham, there we go, alphabet. Now watch this. You know, we know that we can extract a single character, extract a bunch of characters. Whoops, oh, I can just do that on the next line. Oh, I should also show you this. This is interesting as well. You go from 1 to the end, or from the beginning to 1. Okay, so this is a little more about indices and strings. And then yet another thing you can do is you can go X, and I'm going to go from the beginning to the end, and I'm going to skip by 2. And see, that gets every other letter. How about skip by 3? That gets every third letter. Later on, when you learn about lists and tuples, you will see that there is an entirely parallel behavior. So it's very economical, and there's not a whole lot you need to memorize. Okay, so these are some more examples of ways of accessing things in strings. All right, we have index and we have count. Let's try count on for size. Let's go x.count. It's not going to be very exciting here. And let's try A. And it occurs once. Well, they all occur once. But if you do something like this, okay, and now you go rigor mortis dot count of M. That occurs once, but as the song says, you've got like 4 S's in here, right? Hey, look at that. So you can count the number of times different characters appear in a string. That's a useful thing if you're trying to break a very simple substitution code. Okay, so we have count, all right? And so we're just sort of looking through here to see what all is available to us. Here's a bunch of things about lists. We don't know about those yet. Mutable sequence types, we don't know about those yet. Tuples, but you can explore them. But we're going to come down here and see string. Now here's a whole section on just strings. They tell you, oh, this is interesting, that if you have a single quoted string, a double quote becomes an ordinary character inside of it. If you have a double quoted string, a single quoted becomes an ordinary character. And then they have these triple quoted strings. Well, what's that all about? Well, suppose you want a string to span more than one line. So I'll do this. Okay. Now watch this. Now that doesn't look that great, but we can, Python has something called print, and it'll show you how it actually shows on the screen. And you can have a string have lots and lots of lines in it. You can put 3 double quotes on each side, or you can put 3 single quotes on each side. But again, rule is they all have to be of the same type. They all have to be double quote or single quote. If you mix them, Python will hiss at you and give you a syntax error. So you can see we're beginning to look through here and see what kind of string. Oh, capitalize. So capitalize is kind of a silly method, but you can go like this. So we'll say President equals Washington. And then we'll say president. Dot capitalize. And Washington gets capitalized. I don't use that one all that often. Center is kind of cool. You know, you go like this. You say, okay, Cowabunga. Now, let's see what it says we need to do. It says dot center. So you see it says a width and a fill char. And because this second thing is in brackets, the fill char is optional. But they tell you the default down here is a space. So here, let's try both guises of it. Cowabunga dot center of 50. And you get a string, and you can see it's 50 characters long, Cowabunga centered in it. And if you want Cowabunga dots to be centered in something interesting, or maybe boring, I'll put a star in there. There you go. So you can center something. That's for like you formatting something. Ends with, that's kind of an obvious interpretation. Let's try it. Oh, look, I have a file. Its name is cows.txt. File dot ends with. Oh, you can check a file name extension. That's kind of useful. Ends with, has a buddy called, either starts with or begins with. You can look that up and find it. Here is find. You can specify here, what you're looking for. And you could specify a start and an end. So you can find in part of a string. Okay, rather than finding in the whole thing. Now, format, that's a little complicated. I think I'm going to give a video just by itself on string formatting because Python has made some changes here, and the changes are actually quite nice. I think you'll be pleased by them. Okay, so you can see there are other things to check and see if a string returns true if all the characters in the string are alphanumeric and if there's at least one character, false otherwise. Okay, so notice the starting with is, that's indicative of the fact that it's going to give you a value of true or false when it's done its job. Is identifier, well, that's a test to see if a string is a legal variable name. That can be useful. Okay, so there are lots of these is things. Oh, ljust will do like center, only it will left justify. And I would imagine if there's an ljust, there's probably an rjust somewhere. You can look that up. Now, replace, that's kind of an interesting thing to use. So it replaces all old with new. And if an argument count is given, only the first count occurrence is replaced. Hey, let's take that for a test drive. So I'm going to say abracadaver. Ooh, that's dead magical. Replace. So it's going to return a new string, and I'm going to change all the little a's to big A's. And there you go. Okay, so you can go through and replace every instance of a substring with some other substring. And like I promised, there's rjust. Okay, strip will remove white space from around a string. There's rstrip, lstrip, and plain old strip. Okay, so here's starts with in strip. Swap case does the obvious thing. Okay, so you should, on your own, go through and look in here. Upper and lower are here. And so here we have a pretty nice collection of methods for strings. And now you know where to find what you need. So this is all about, this section of the Python documentation is all about the standard types. And what I'm going to do is in the comment section, I'll put a link to this so you don't have to read the contents of the small type in my URL bar.